There are certain evenings when the human heart falls very still, not because love has vanished, but because it is waiting quietly, hoping it won't be misread in the wrong light. And if these words somehow found you today, maybe part of your soul is already worn out from pretending indifference, while another part still secretly hopes someone out there is holding on to you just as tightly. Because the truth is, someone cares for you far more deeply than you realize. Not in the loud, cinematic way films tend to portray love, not through perfect timing or flawless words, but through hesitation, emotional confusion, and distance that conceals fear rather than disinterest. And before you talk yourself into walking away for good, you need to grasp something most people only understand too late. Some hearts don't stop loving you when they fall silent. Sometimes silence is simply the last defense of a soul, afraid of losing something it cannot fully put into words. People are strange when it comes to love, especially once it becomes genuine. We spend our lives convinced we crave deep emotional connection. Yet the instant someone actually reaches the hidden corners of us, fear begins to surface. Carl Jung once compared the unconscious mind to a vast ocean lying beneath human behavior. And when someone genuinely loves you, they don't just touch your outer personality. They unintentionally stir the forgotten pieces buried beneath it. Your insecurities, your unmet emotional needs, your loneliness, your longing to finally be chosen without conditions. That kind of bond transforms people. It rattles them from within. It uncovers emotional wounds they've spent years steering clear of. This is why someone can love you profoundly and still retreat exactly when you need reassurance most. It feels baffling, but psychologically, it tracks. Love isn't only warmth. Love is exposure. Love is vulnerability, standing emotionally unguarded before another person, hoping they won't turn your softness against you. And many people were never shown how to handle emotional closeness. They learned how to survive letdowns. They learned how to appear strong. They learned how to mask their feelings, but they never learned how to safely accept love without fear. So when this person grew emotionally attached to you, something within them began to shift in ways they can't fully articulate. Your presence started influencing their inner emotional world. Your silence suddenly carried weight. Your attention became something that steadied their emotions. Your absence began to feel heavier than they expected. And that frightened them, because once someone gains the power to affect your emotional state, your mind instinctively senses danger. Suddenly loss feels possible again. Suddenly abandonment feels real once more. Suddenly the independence they built no longer feels entirely secure. Many people mistake emotional distance for a lack of love, but often that distance is actually a sign of emotional overload. There are people who turn cold because they don't care, and others who pull away because they care too much. The second kind is harder to make sense of because their actions don't match their feelings. Their heart drifts towards you while fear tugs them back. One part wants nearness. Another part whispers, "What if this ends like everything else?" And without noticing, they begin guarding themselves against pain that hasn't even happened. Maybe you've experienced this contradiction firsthand, that odd inconsistency, warmth followed by silence. The way they glance at you when they think you're not looking, the way they recall small things about you without even trying, the emotional charge even in ordinary conversations, and yet something still feels incomplete, something blocked. It's as though their soul leans your way, while their mind keeps backing off. This is often what unresolved emotional wounds look like. People picture trauma as something loud and obvious, but most emotional wounds are quiet. They hide inside attachment patterns, fear of vulnerability, and emotional withdrawal. Some people vanish emotionally the moment they begin caring too much, because closeness unconsciously echoes pain they never fully healed. Maybe they once loved someone who abandoned them. Maybe they learned early on that showing emotion invites rejection. Maybe vulnerability once wounded them so deeply that their nervous system now reads intimacy as a threat. And here's the painful part. They may not even consciously grasp why they act this way. The subconscious mind governs far more than most people realize. Comment still waiting. If you're holding on to someone who's gone quiet, but you sense they still care, understand this. A person can love you and still undermine the connection, because their nervous system links love with emotional danger. They want closeness, but closeness sets off fear. They crave intimacy, But intimacy sets off vulnerability. So they start sending mixed signals without fully understanding themselves. This is why emotionally mature love demands patience more than passion. Passion comes easily. Anyone can feel a burst of intense desire. But real love asks for something much harder. It asks people to gradually shed emotional armor. It asks them to trust again after being wounded. It asks them to remain open despite the uncertainty. And for many, that feels terrifying because they've built their identity around emotional self-protection. You also need to understand something crucial about silence. Silence isn't always emptiness. Sometimes it's emotional processing happening beneath the surface. Some people express their feelings quickly. Others turn inward when emotions grow too intense. They withdraw into thought, confusion, and inner turmoil, especially those who've spent years suppressing vulnerability. Their silence isn't always a punishment. Sometimes it's simply survival. But this creates painful misunderstandings. One person interprets silence as rejection while the other feels emotionally overwhelmed. One feels forsaken while the other feels flooded. And slowly, two people who care for each other start drifting apart, not because the love disappeared, but because fear grows louder than communication. This is where many people give up too quickly. They mistake emotional complexity for emotional absence. They assume love should always be simple, effortless, and steady. But deep psychological bonds are rarely uncomplicated. They stir the deepest layers of identity. They force people to confront their shadow selves, the insecure, wounded parts hidden beneath pride and confidence. Carl Jung believed real love often functions like a mirror, not just comfort, but a reflection of the hidden self. That's why some connections feel so intense. They stir emotional awareness. They expose patterns you hadn't noticed. Fear of abandonment, overgiving, insecurity, the need for reassurance, hidden loneliness. Suddenly, another person unknowingly becomes bound to the parts of you still healing. They may be living through the very same inner turmoil right now. They may lie awake replaying your conversations while acting fine throughout the day. Type yes if you want me to uncover more hidden psychology behind why they pull away. They may stop themselves from reaching out because pride gets in the way. They may miss you intensely while convincing themselves that distance is necessary. And perhaps the saddest truth of all is this: people often wound the ones they love most because those are the only ones capable of truly hurting them back. That changes everything once you begin viewing behavior through a psychological lens instead of a purely emotional one. You stop mislabeling confusion as a lack of love. You start recognizing defense mechanisms behind actions, delayed replies, inconsistency, withdrawal after closeness, fear disguised as emotional restraint. None of it is healthy left unaddressed, but it is deeply human. And maybe this is what your heart needed to hear today. Not every distant person is void of feeling. Some are simply worn down from carrying a guarded heart. There are people bearing silent grief no one ever noticed. People who taught themselves to seem self-sufficient because depending on others once hurt them. People who quietly crave tenderness but panic once it lingers too close. People who forgot how to trust calm love because chaos once felt like the norm. If this person genuinely loves you, their internal struggle may run deeper than you can see. But there's another truth you can't overlook. Love alone isn't enough without emotional growth. You can't rescue someone from unconscious patterns if they refuse to face themselves. You can't keep sacrificing your emotional well-being, hoping your love alone will mend their fear. Real connection requires shared responsibility. Compassion matters, but so does self-respect. Understanding someone's wounds should never mean abandoning your own needs. This is where emotional maturity becomes essential. Mature love doesn't beg. It doesn't destroy itself to prove its worth. It doesn't chase endlessly while losing its dignity. Mature love allows for patience without losing yourself. It creates space without disappearing. It offers compassion without dissolving boundaries. And sometimes the greatest act of love isn't forcing a connection, but giving someone room to face themselves honestly. Because real change can't be forced from the outside. A person only changes once they grow tired of repeating the same emotional cycles. Maybe this connection came into your life not just to offer love, but to awaken you psychologically, to teach you the difference between attachment and genuine emotional alignment, to reveal how deeply you crave emotional reciprocity, to make you confront how often you dismiss your intuition out of fear of losing someone. Think about it. Have there been moments when your intuition told you the truth before your mind was ready to accept it? Moments when you sensed feelings hiding behind words? Humans are far more intuitive than they give themselves credit for. The subconscious picks up on emotional cues, body language, silence patterns, shifts in tone, eye contact, nervous tension. Long before logic catches up, the soul often already knows. That's why certain people stay unforgettable, not because they were flawless, but because they stirred something within you. And awakening is never entirely comfortable. It arrives through longing, confusion, distance, and reflection, through missing someone deeply enough to confront your own loneliness. Pain plays a strange psychological role. It strips away illusion. It uncovers emotional truth. It reveals where healing is still needed. That's why some relationships transform you completely, even if they never find stability. They force growth. They force awareness. They force emotional evolution. And maybe this person is standing near that same transformation right now. Maybe they're slowly realizing that avoiding their emotions no longer shields them the way it once did. Maybe your absence is forcing them to face feelings they've been trying to bury. Comment Jung. If Carl Jung's insights on love and fear are striking a chord right now, maybe you're beginning to realize that real love can't survive forever inside silence, distance, and pride. Because sooner or later, every person reaches a point where loneliness starts weighing more heavily than vulnerability. And when that moment arrives, people begin to change. Not all at once, not flawlessly, but gradually over time, they start recognizing the emotional walls they've built around themselves. They begin noticing how often fear has been steering their choices. They come to understand how many chances at real connection they've lost just to shield themselves from getting hurt. And for the first time, they start to see something important. Emotional safety cannot exist without emotional openness. This realization changes everything within a person. But while they're moving through their own inner awakening, you also need to keep moving through yours. Don't let uncertainty erode your self-worth. Don't allow someone else's confusion to convince you that you're difficult to love or somehow not enough. How someone responds to closeness often reveals their relationship with themselves more than it reveals your value as a person. Many emotionally unavailable people aren't withholding love because you're unworthy. They withhold it because they're afraid. Afraid of needing someone, afraid of depending on someone, afraid of rejection, afraid of losing control, afraid of being fully seen and known. And strangely, the deeper they feel, the more frightened they become. This creates inner conflict. They want closeness, yet push it away at the same time. Unless they consciously heal, they remain caught between longing and fear. But you cannot carry the emotional burden of two people. You can love someone deeply and still choose balance for yourself. You can understand someone's psychology without excusing constant emotional inconsistency. Compassion should never spiral into self-destruction. This is one of the most vital lessons emotionally aware people eventually learn. Love should expand your life, not slowly dissolve your identity. And still, despite all this complexity, some connections are worth the effort. Rare bonds where two people gradually learn each other's fears with patience rather than judgment. Bonds where emotional walls begin to soften with time. Bonds where both people choose healing over ego. These kinds of relationships do exist, but they demand honesty, responsibility, vulnerability, patience, and emotional courage. Most importantly, they demand two people willing to stop running from themselves. Because every relationship eventually becomes a mirror reflecting who you truly are inside. You cannot genuinely love someone while remaining disconnected from your own emotional truth. That's why inner shadow work matters. Shadow work isn't merely spiritual terminology. In psychological terms, it means honestly confronting the hidden parts of yourself. The jealousy you deny, the fear you avoid, the loneliness you distract yourself from, the patterns you repeat without noticing, the wounds you pretend have healed. Until someone confronts these hidden layers, relationships keep repeating the same emotional pain in different shapes. Maybe this person is now beginning to face their own shadow because of you. Maybe your presence, your love, your emotional honesty became something they could no longer avoid. And even if they haven't fully arrived there yet, something inside them still knows this connection matters. People don't struggle emotionally this deeply over someone who means nothing to them. Real inner conflict only surfaces where real attachment exists. That's why indifference feels simple and quiet, while love feels intense, confusing, and emotionally charged. When someone truly doesn't care, their energy feels flat. But when someone deeply cares while also feeling fear, their energy becomes unsteady, emotional, and mixed. You sense that inner conflict even without a single word. You've probably already picked up on it. That pull, that unfinished feeling, that quiet intuition that something real still lingers beneath the silence. And maybe you've doubted yourself because of it. Maybe you keep wondering whether you're imagining things. But deep intuition rarely shows up without reason. The subconscious mind often notices emotional truths before logic catches on. Still, intuition must always be balanced with wisdom. Share this with someone who is overthinking a silent connection right now. Don't endlessly romanticize emotional pain. Don't become hooked on uncertainty just because intensity feels meaningful. Some people stay trapped in painful emotional cycles because unpredictability creates a kind of psychological dependency. The nervous system grows accustomed to emotional highs and lows, and afterward, calm love can feel foreign or even dull. This is why healing reshapes what draws us in. Emotionally healthy people stop chasing confusion just to feel something intense. They start valuing stability, honesty, peace, and emotional safety. They stop mistaking emotional unavailability for depth. They stop trying to earn love through suffering. And maybe this whole experience is gradually leading you toward that same realization, because sometimes life doesn't bring someone into your world just to complete you. Sometimes it brings them to transform you, to raise your standards, to sharpen your awareness, to teach you that love should be mutual, not confusing. At the same time, growth takes time for everyone involved. If this person genuinely loves you, they may currently be battling things inside themselves that no one else can see. Battles between old wounds and new hope, between fear and desire, between self-protection and emotional surrender. And maybe right now, they're somewhere alone thinking about you, replaying your words, wondering if it's already too late to be honest. The human heart carries regret more heavily than rejection. Many people dodge vulnerability in the short term only to later realize that silence itself became the reason they lost someone important. Don't underestimate how deeply someone can feel emotions they can't put into words. Some of the strongest feelings hide behind quiet behavior, not because silence is ideal, but because humans are imperfect and emotionally complicated. That's what makes love both beautiful and painful. Two wounded people trying to trust each other while carrying invisible scars. Two nervous systems shaped by different pain. Two inner children silently asking the same question. Will you still stay if you see the real me? And maybe that question sits at the center of this connection too, because beneath pride, beneath silence, beneath fear, there's often just a person afraid of not being enough for the one they love. Many emotionally distant people secretly believe they'll eventually let others down, so they create distance first as a form of self-protection. If I stay guarded, losing them will hurt less. But love doesn't work that way. Guarded love still hurts. Silent love still hurts. Suppressed emotions still leave scars, and eventually the heart grows exhausted, carrying feelings that were never honestly expressed. This is why emotional honesty matters. Not fake emotion, not manipulation, not dependency dressed up as love. Real honesty sounds like this. I am afraid, but I care. I don't fully understand myself yet, but you matter to me. I struggle, but I don't want to lose you. Moments like these can change everything in a relationship, and if this person reaches that point, everything between you could shift. But until then, your responsibility is not to lose yourself while waiting. Keep healing, keep growing, keep becoming whole, no matter what happens, because your worth doesn't diminish just because someone else is confused. You are not hard to love. You are not too much. You are not wrong for wanting clarity, consistency, and emotional presence. Never let someone who is emotionally struggling convince you your needs are too large simply because they feel uneasy meeting them. Healthy love may not be flawless, but it should feel safe enough to breathe in. And one day, Whether with this person or someone new, you'll experience a connection that doesn't require constant decoding, a connection where love isn't hidden, a connection where honesty replaces silence, a connection where two people stop pretending they don't care as deeply as they do. But before that future arrives, this current connection may still have something left to teach you both. Maybe closure, maybe growth, maybe awakening, maybe courage. Only time reveals that truth. But don't ignore what your heart already senses quietly. Somewhere, someone may truly love you deeply, imperfectly, quietly, and genuinely. And before you give up entirely, understand this. People sometimes need time to become emotionally capable of the love they already feel inside. Healing isn't instant. Emotional maturity often arrives slowly, and sometimes only after loss teaches its lesson. That's the painful part of human growth, but also the meaningful part. Because sometimes when everything feels uncertain, people finally become honest with themselves. And maybe this story isn't ending the way fear keeps telling you. Maybe this silence isn't the end of love. Maybe it's the uncomfortable stage before the truth becomes clear. So before you convince yourself you were never loved, remember this. Not everyone who is distant has stopped caring. Some are simply fighting internal battles between love and fear. And if your heart still feels something real, even without explanation, there's usually a reason for that. Maybe two souls are still finding their way back to honesty. Until then, protect your peace, but don't shut your heart completely. Stay wise, but don't grow cold. Type awakening if this message helps you understand your emotions better, because people who keep believing in love after disappointment are often the ones who experience it most profoundly in the end. And maybe one day you'll look back on this moment not as the loss of love, but as the beginning of emotional clarity. If this reached something inside you, hold on to that feeling. Somewhere within you, you already know what is real and what is not. Thank you for being here in this moment, thought to thought, feeling to feeling. And if this speaks to the quiet parts of you that are rarely understood, stay close. There is still more to understand about love, healing, and emotional truth. Until next time, take care of your heart gently and never forget how deeply you deserve to be loved.